October is in the books, and I was surprised when I finally got to digest all of the data. So in today's video, I'm going to take you through not only our normal slides, but there are some extra data points that I want to make sure you're aware of, because if you have assumed that the market is slowing down, just as I had, some of these data points do contradict that. So let's dive right in. If this is your first market update, we start with a little bit of history. We then go into some visuals, some charts to show you exactly what is happening compared to what's happened in the past. And then we'll wrap up with everybody's favorite predictions and what we expect to see going forward based off of the data. So mortgage rates have continued to increase. That should hopefully change now that the Federal Reserve came out yesterday on November 1st and said that they're not raising rates currently. They did not close the door on any future increases, as everybody hoped that they would. But in the short term, over the next 30 days before they meet again in early December, I would not expect rates to rise much further, if at all. Now, I also don't expect them to decrease much, if at all. They'll probably bounce around on a day-to-day basis, but they should stay about where they are, around 8%. Now, again, don't let that 8% alone scare you. Totally depends on the product, what type of home you're going to buy. A lot of different factors play into this. So if you are on the fence, but you are not sure, and that 8% scares you, don't get too scared. I highly recommend you talk to a lender or talk to me, and I can give you the context of what likely your rate would be depending on the product. Inventory-wise, two things. Now, we ended at 248 in October, which is up 3% from September. Not bad. Normally, we see a little bit more of an increase from September to October. But one thing I want to let you know is now here we are on November 2nd, the day I'm recording this, and we are actually down to 238. So we had roughly 10 homes go off the market and expire. We'll see if those come back. Usually a handful do, but some tend not to. So we've actually started off on a bad foot in the month of November, whereas we normally see inventory rise by the time we get to the end. And I'm not ruling out that that may be the case, but not a good start. Not what we want to see if you're looking to buy. If you're looking to sell, great news. Days on market, still very stable. You'll see that in a bit. And price-wise, so we, again, have confirmed now that we got to the end of the month, we have seen our first year-over-year decrease when it comes to single-family homes. Now, again, if you're a data nerd, I want to talk you through this real quick. If not, hang with me for 5 seconds, and then we will move right on. So I use a 12-month rolling average. This is not a 1-month median. This is not a 1-month mean. It is something that will be smoother than the erratic nature of markets, especially down here with smaller sample sizes that we have. So condos are continuing to increase year over year. Now, we went from about 15% year over year last month to 14%. So we're starting to see a tiny, tiny slowdown. It's nothing I'm going to read into whatsoever. Now, before we dive into these charts, the important statistics that I wanted to share with you, and I want to make sure I get these out of the way early, just in case you don't stick around to the end. So I was under the impression that things have slowed down. It certainly feels that way. Buyers, sellers that I've talked to, listing agents, everybody feels that way. Everything seems to have slowed down. But a shocking statistic for you. So over the last 3 months, August, September, and October of 2023, if we compare the amount of homes that went under contract over the past 3 months to the same 3 months in 2022, we've had a 23% increase in the homes going under contract. So that's in the face of when these rates have gotten to be the worst, that were well above 7+ when we got into August. And now here we are at 8. And that hasn't stopped everybody. I'm not going to say it hasn't stopped anybody. It clearly has. But again, I would have assumed that 2022 rates, peaked at 7 in October, and that was scary for everybody. They were in the mid 6s, maybe low 6s in August. But we had 23% more activity, more homes going under contract. And that's with over 12, 13% less inventory than we had at the same time last year. So we have more activity and less inventory, which is not what anybody expected to happen this time of year, yours truly included. So one other thing is that there's a metric I track called velocity, basically how fast we're going through inventory, different statistic than months of inventory. But for 4 months running, compared to the same months last year in 2022, homes are selling faster. So it definitely flies in the face of, again, what I'm feeling on a daily basis, what buyers and sellers are feeling on a daily basis, but there's still enough activity and they're still happening. So I want to touch toward the end as to why there is that difference. So let's go through the charts. New listing wise, we did see a decrease in October compared to September. If you go back and you can pause and look at this over the past few years, that is normal. We've seen a few percentage points decrease in the percentage of new listings that do come this month compared to the last. Now, what I want to share with you here, and again, I'll future cast here for a second, since we tend to be mirroring 2022 over the past few months, and the trends seem to be continuing in that direction, I get the question all the time of how much new inventory is going to be coming, when are new options going to hit, because there's nothing out there that fits, even for active buyers who are still ready and hungry. There just isn't a fit for them. So over the past 2 months, we had 192 new listings, which just stick that in your head for a minute. Over the next 2 months, if we match what we saw in 2022, as we basically did for September and October, if we see it again in November, December, same as 2022, we should only expect about 100 new listings, 100 more. So that's not a lot, but that again is seasonality. That's normal. It happens. But I don't want the narrative to run away. And I've had to talk a few people out of believing this, that all of a sudden people are going to panic and all the new inventory is going to come right over the next few months. It's not going to happen. As a listing agent myself and other agents who work with sellers, any sane listing agent, unless you really need to sell, which most people here don't, hold off a couple months, right? If you can hold off until we hit February, give or take, that's when the seasonality improves and works in your favor. Buyers come back around. That's not to say there's no point in ever listing now, but most listings we will see a pickup once we hit February, but the next 3 months will be very slow. Pending sales, once again, year over year, we had more than we had last year go under contract, to the point where when we started off this year, when we were halfway through the year, it looked like we were going to have about 30% fewer total sales at the end of the year. Once we compare the last 12 months to the current most recent 12-month period, over a 30% decrease. Because of what's happened over the last 4 to 5 months, we are now trending towards about a 10% decrease. That is not what anybody expected to happen in the face of these interest rates, in the face of prices not dropping. Demand is still out there, and there's still enough of it to keep things going. So again, I've been tooting this horn for, I don't know, a year and a half now, maybe more. New normal. We seem to have achieved a new normal, and now it's a very delicate balance. I'll touch on that later on. And then closed sales, right? Closed sales, another year over year slight increase, just like last month. The month prior was about even. This is a lagging stat, not going to spend a lot of time on it, but again, homes are still selling. That's the point of that slide. Now, this one's interesting. So we had a huge peak in months of inventory for single family homes. We've now seen that moderate down to a balanced market, a slightly seller-friendly market at around or just under 5 months of inventory. But the supply is just not there. Over the past 4 to 5 months, they've stayed in the 60s for total available single-family homes to buy. And it's trending downward, honestly. We've started at 69, then went to 65, then up to 67. Now we're at 61. Again, I'm not going to write any epitaphs because of that. Not going to read too much into it. It's just a couple houses here and there, but still trending to stay around that level. And inventory would have to spike significantly for this to go back upwards to get into giving you buyers some more leverage. Now, sale price, right? Now, this looks like it's going to be a slow trend down, and I've hit on this in every market update video that I've done for the past few months. We expected this. I saw this coming because the prices 11, 12, 13 months ago were unsustainably high, right? Over 2 million for the most part for a median sale price. That is higher than we would expect. So here we are just above 1.5 or just under 1.6, I should say, and we should stay in that range. But no, I don't expect this to continue decreasing, and I highly recommend you don't fall for that trap either, even though it looks like that may happen. Days on market staying nice and steady in the mid to high 50s, which is great. Months of inventory for condos is getting very close and has stayed right just under that 5-month mark, more or less, right? Just under 4 for the past year or so. Everything is very, very healthy in this segment, but I don't expect that to change. That also is reflected in the continually increasing prices. Some months are a little bit bigger than others. We did have one minor step down way back in January of 2023, but I expect that we should see these stabilize, and whether they inch up at 0.5% per month, I'm not going to sweat too much about that. Point being, there's not going to be, I don't foresee a huge correction. It would take something absolutely catastrophic for that to happen. So days on market, again, leveling out at a very low place, sub 50 days. And now we talk about the fun stuff. So Mortgage rates, as I mentioned earlier, the Fed did not raise rates in November. Now, the hope, and there's still time for this, is that they come out and say, hey, look, I think we've achieved our goal. However, that is unlikely to happen because a lot of the measurements that they track, GDP growth, jobs reports, all that stuff, still showing a very healthy and strong economy. And their goal is not to crush it. It's not to cause a huge recession. But if they see things strengthening versus weakening, they're going to feel that their job is not done. Inflation is going to continue being above their ideal mark of 2%. So I don't expect that they will come out and say we're done. And because they can't say that, the investors that drive all of this stuff in the background in the bond market and treasuries and everything, they're unlikely to get confident enough to think that we're done to then make decisions accordingly that would result in mortgage rates starting to come down. That's not going to happen. So I expect us to be here for quite some time. Next Fed meeting is early December, so there really shouldn't be much change between now and then. Now, inventory-wise, what we saw was normal, an increase from September to October. Now, one thing that I did not expect is that we saw a 12% decrease in the amount of new listings in October 2023 compared to October 2022. So even fewer new listings. And maybe I should have seen that coming with, the lock-in effect that I've talked about many, many times. But when homes under contract decrease 12% like that, it's not going to help our cause if we're buyers in this market. I should say it's not going to help our cause. This is just showing again a very stable and strong market. When I say stable and strong, that does not mean that everybody is off the sidelines, right, and gobbling properties up again. There's not a ton of competition out there right now, but there are still enough buyers who are ready, willing, and able to make a move when the right home hits. And I'm not saying you shouldn't act quickly, right? There are still homes that do go under contract in a day, 2, 3, 4. But a lot of buyers have, I'll say, been trained by the market to say, hey, let's give it a week, right? Let's wait to see if it goes multiple offers in the first few days. We're not willing to go above that asking price anyway. But if it's still there, we'll take a shot. I would generally always recommend that you get down here ASAP. We do a virtual tour, anything like that, so that you see it first. But if it's not a must-have, right, and for most of you out there, this is a want, not a need. It's not a must-have. It's up to you and your agent, whether that's me or somebody else, to balance what the right strategy and approach is for you. The goal should be that no matter the outcome, you are content, right? You can look at each other, you can look in the mirror and say, we stuck to our guns, we had a plan, we executed the plan. If it worked, great. If it didn't, great. That's okay. So make sure you have those, because with there being so few opportunities coming up, if you don't have a plan and you accidentally give it a week, right, to see what happens, and lo and behold, it's sold for, 5% under what they're asking, and then you're kicking yourself. And now that's going to be an anchor point for you. And the likelihood of another opportunity like that coming, that's going to be that location, that match, that condition, is not great over the coming months. And if we're waiting until the spring to kick things back into gear, now you are likely to face more competition. So it's really important to be extra vigilant over the next 60 to 90 days when things are typically slower. And I know that sounds backwards. You should be able to take your foot off the gas. But if you're looking for a value, and this is my sweet spot this time of year, I impolitely say that I go picking through the trash. And I don't mean that derogatorily, if that's a word. Just going through everything that's been out there for a while, poking every listing agent, poking every seller to see where the room is, to see if we can, get something together here at a number that makes sense for everybody. So I love this time of year for that exclusively. But again, if mortgage rates stay roughly where they are, inventory, we should see mirror pretty closely the directional movement that we saw in 2023. We should see it again in 2024. And that means that we're not going to see a ton coming, as I've been saying for a very long time now, right? We need well over 300, potentially over 350, which is still well below historically when we were in 450, 500, 550 range, to start to see some real change in terms of prices. And I just don't see it coming. So with prices in mind, again, I spoke to this already, that we expected them to come down in October because October of 2022, the median sale price was 2.1 million. That is abnormally high. Now, funny enough, we had another very high median price point this October at 1.9 million. So the decrease wasn't as large as I had thought it was going to be this month, but it was still going to be there. nonetheless. And we should see that stabilize in November. Again, looking backwards to November of 2022, we had a pretty low median price point. So unless we see something surprising in the month of November, and I already looked ahead because most homes that are going to close in November are already under contract, and we should see this stabilize. So I don't expect, for there to be some clearance rack options out there on the market. Again, there's no reason for a seller to do that unless there's an urgent need. But in this market, very, very few people, if ever, have an urgent need to sell. And agent like myself, even if someone finds themselves in that position, rather than take a steep discount just to move on, most of these owners have been there for a long time. Anyone in that position has usually been owned for quite a while, usually 5 to 10 plus years. They would be making a horrific financial decision to sell at a steep discount. They're much better served to find, even if it's a full-time property management company, and pay somebody right through the nose 20% to take care of everything for you, but rent it out, keep it, because that value is likely not to come down anytime soon. So again, price-wise, they should stay where they are. This is the time again to poke and see where the wiggle room is. I know of a few of these. There's 2 or 3 that come to top of mind that I know there is room on the price because they do have some more motivation. So if you're curious what those are, reach out. I can't speak about them publicly. They're not my listings. I can't advertise things that are not mine. But if you reach out directly, we can certainly discuss that. So next 60 days, if you're a serious buyer, even if you'd prefer to buy in the spring, I highly recommend that you stay vigilant over the next 60 days. There will be some deals. And those of you who are going to wake up in February, like most buyers do, and look back, you're going to see some things where you're going to wish you took a shot. I firmly believe that with full confidence because I see it every year. I have the conversations with buyers every year who wake up or come around for the first time in March, April, May. We look through some comps like, oh my gosh, why didn't we know about that? Well, we weren't paying attention back then, right? We fell asleep at the wheel. So I don't want to let that happen. But at the same time, it's a shared responsibility to make sure that we are staying engaged on everything all the time. So last but not least, days on market, still very low, as I mentioned. I don't expect those to change anything drastically anytime soon. So with that said, hopefully you now feel the same way that I do. And I want to get into the last nugget here of why do the data points differ with what we're seeing on the ground as far as having speed being faster, homes under contract being higher than we thought. So I thought about this long and hard over the past 48 hours since I pulled the stats. And going back again to context that I have working with buyers and sellers, I spoke with many agents yesterday at a broker's open house that I had. Everybody's pretty much aligned. Most people who typically need the rental income to make sense in order to buy a home here, those are the people who have mostly moved to the sidelines at this point because things just don't make sense. It's very difficult where you may have been even 6 months ago, $20,000 to $30,000 in the hole, even if you rent out the whole summer. Now it's worse than that. If you're putting 20% down. And when I'm talking about these terms, these are all relative blanket terms. I assume minimum down payment of 20% and a whole bunch of other data points. But if your situation differs, please don't take these at face value and run. Again, this is something you need to have a conversation with based off of your scenario. So with that said, worse off now than you were 6 months ago. And most people, again, wait for these opportunities in the fall, but the carrying cost at mortgage rates where they are with no income coming in for a while, it's tough for a lot of people to swallow. So those buyers have generally moved to the sidelines. What that's left is cash buyers. That percentage has actually shrunk over the past few months. And just strict second home owners, people who are going to use it for themselves, that want to be down here during the off season, who enjoy the tranquility of it, even though if the weather's not perfect, those people are still highly active. And last but not least, we still have a very active development community here that is always seeking opportunities. Any development opportunity that comes up still gets multiple developer offers. And then that breeds a lot of new construction. So we're seeing the percentage of new construction still stay very, very high. Usually in the past, it was below about 35% of the total inventory was new construction. But now we are seeing that number hover, especially in the single family market, closer to 50%. In the condo market, it's closer to 40, but still well above what it normally has been in the past because homeowners who own a home, for the most part, aren't selling, right? They're not going to part with a 2.5%, 3%, 3.5%, fill in the blank mortgage rate, or they're going to hold it and turn it into a rental property. So I don't see things changing in a big way anytime soon. Continues to be my mantra. It's going to stay my mantra unless something major changes. And I can't even predict what that would be at this point, but it would have to be something crazy. So with that said, obviously all of my contact information is over here as well in the description. You can reach out with any questions if you want to come up with a plan, come up with a strategy of when you are ready to start looking, when the values are, what you're looking for, what your preferences are. I'm always happy to talk, be a sounding board for you. My whole goal in doing this is just helping people make better decisions. I've seen too many people get taken advantage of in the past, and they find out, information too late. So that is it for today. If you enjoyed it, do me a favor and give this video a like. And if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe down below because I'm going to be putting out more content as we continue going towards 2023, bring it to an end. So thanks for hanging out with me as always. I'll see you next time.